right, well, my name is Dan, Taxation Is Theft Behrman. I'm running for governor of Texas. I previously ran for United States president with the Libertarian Party. And one of the main messages that I'm really trying to bring is, of course, ending taxation, but I'm really trying to bring people together because what I see in our politics today is that we have been completely divided into separate groups, whether it's based on left or right, or Democrat or Republican, or based on our color or religion. Anything else, our wealth, our value. We've been divided, and we got to fix this. Because the reality is we all want the same thing. We all just want to have good lives. We want to be left alone. We want to have homes and raise our families, have good jobs, be able to retire and save some money and have our own safety nets. We all want the same thing, whether you're on the left or the right. And we have all these political issues that are thrown at us that are trying to convince us like, well, hey, taxes are going to make that impossible for you, or the cost of healthcare, or these giant corporations, or, the police are racist and this religion, and this is how they're dividing us. And the reality is we all want the same thing. We just have to work together and see that the political machine is run by completely irrational people who are putting these policies in front of us and teaching us to hate each other. I've met so many people from the far left to the far right, and once we sit down and kind of get past our differences, we realize we have so much common ground. We might appreciate different lifestyles, we might live our lives differently, but we all want that same thing. To have what we own, to own ourselves, to govern ourselves, live our lives the way we want to live our lives, and to be left alone. And when we can achieve that, our lives are just going to be so much better. So this is what I'm trying to bring to the state of Texas, and hopefully to use this as an influence for the rest of the country and the rest of the world. And what I found amazing about this message is, as I've been doing this, as I ran for president of the United States, this message has gone around the world. I've been invited several times to speak in Uganda. I've met with people who have found me from all the way from Australia to Europe, Spain, different languages who are reaching out to me to thank me for this message and asking how they can bring this message to their own country. So this is kind of our way forward. It's a really important message. This is how we bring everyone together. We have to stop fighting because we're being told to fight over imaginary stories that are made up by politicians in order to pass these corrupt policies that benefit them, that profit them, so they can become billionaires off of our dime. So that's what I'm trying to change.
Okay, and just some quick questions. So,
sure.
With news to share, they've sent me to the Capitol multiple times down in Austin, and I've been there for a whole bunch of different protests. Both left side and right side. So just firstly, Second Amendment rights. That's a big thing. A lot of people show up for that type of stuff. Do you have any plans with that? I mean, do you think it is?
Yeah.
It's good where it is? Do we need gun control? More gun laws? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think so. Right now, there's a bill that's on its way to be passed that allows constitutional carry, and I think this is a great idea. I know guns scare a lot of people, and this is another one of these issues that they have us divided on. The reality is communities that have more guns are traditionally safer, but communities like Chicago and Detroit, where guns are illegal, or not necessarily illegal, but they're more difficult to get, you see a lot more violence. We've seen, even in Mexico, we've seen, places where the cartels are taking over because it's extreme. It's even more difficult to get guns in Mexico, even though it's legal. They do have constitutional rights for that. But what we've seen is small communities where people have their own guns have been able to successfully chase out the cartels. So this is, people are worried if we allow more guns, there's going to be more reckless behavior. But the reality is having more guns in the hands of responsible people prevents violent people from making really stupid decisions and committing crimes. This can be statistically proven in so many different ways, and it's our right. This is how we defend our lives. I get it, guns are scary. I grew up in California afraid of guns because DARE would come to us and they teach us, even if the gun's not loaded, it can still go off. I went through that, but once I kind of learned and understood the gun culture, I became someone who understands and supports the Second Amendment much better. And this is, yeah.
Okay.
I don't know.
That's a good answer. So you said you were running for governor, and of course, being governor of Texas, you got COVID. I mean, how do you transition? How do you plan on transitioning out of COVID? have so many lockdowns, still in
Right.
some counties and everything. We're opening up, but there's a lot of people that are still scared of it. There's those who don't care for the mask anymore. What are your thoughts, kind of transitioning out of that?
Right. So, I just talked about some of the issues we had from COVID, people not being able to pay their bills and businesses shutting down, and this is really tragic. And what we need to understand is some people don't see as big a risk from COVID as others do. And of course, they've been telling us we have to be afraid, we're all going to die. This is the message that's been on the media. And the reality is some people aren't afraid, some people have caught it, and they're fine. We need to open businesses. We need to be completely open. And if you're one of these people who is afraid of COVID, don't go to those businesses. There are so many businesses, even now, without a mask mandate. There are so many businesses that are mandating masks on their own, out of their own freedom. And that's okay. That's totally understandable because this is a real virus. There is a real threat, especially to some people who are more vulnerable. But we can't go around forcing other people to shut down their businesses when they're not afraid and when they want to live this life. The reality is there are so many things in this world that can kill us. Life is dangerous. This is how our life is going to end. Do we want to live it or do we want to live it in fear? I prefer to live mine. I know some other people would live it a little bit different way, and that's okay. You can do that. But we can't force others to shut down their businesses and take away their livelihood when they're not afraid of this. I want to throw one more thing in there. There are a lot of medications that our government is denying us because they haven't been proven effective when there's trials for certain drugs that medical professionals have taken where they don't wear masks and they're not catching the virus. There are other drugs that have shown significant increases in the well-being of people who catch COVID. But we're being told that these medicines don't work or that they're not approved by the FDA, and why not? There haven't been studies because this is a new virus and we haven't had several years to conduct these studies, but the experimentation that many people have found with this is that they work. So why are we being told that it doesn't work and being denied access? We have a right, and if we see that there's a potential for a medication to help us, why don't we have access to that? Why can't we take that risk on our own if there is in fact a risk?
What are your thoughts on mandatory vaccines? That's a big subject that's
Right.
coming up a lot.
Right, mandatory vaccines are a terrible idea. Even the vaccine passport. And if again, you have the right to take the vaccine if that's what you choose to do. But the reality is there are some people who are going to have allergic reactions to vaccines. You can't mandate them. And if you have a vaccine passport, then what? You have to create a system of exemptions so that some people aren't barred from going to certain places. Because the whole concept of the vaccine is not even to make sure that everybody is vaccinated, it's to make sure that enough people are vaccinated so that we reach herd immunity. So if that's the case, we're going to have people who aren't vaccinated, and we can't force this on people who don't want to take that risk on their own, especially knowing their own health risk. The government can pass a law, but they don't know me. They haven't talked to me personally. They haven't talked to you personally. There are millions of people across the country, across the state, who have completely different, unique medical records and histories, and the government they cannot address all of them. When they pass a bill and they try to mandate something, they're trying to do a one-size-fits-all, and we just don't work that way.
Okay, and Black Lives Matter. Recently, throughout the past year, it's been protest after protest after protest. Some turning dangerous, most of them being peaceful. If you're governor of Texas and something happens like that, there's a riot, say up in Dallas or even here in Waco. How would you handle that situation? It spirals out of control very quickly. Businesses get destroyed. People get hurt. How would you handle that situation?
Absolutely. Well, I think there's two things going on here. People are rightfully upset at what the government is doing. We have armed, militarized police going around to different neighborhoods and killing people disproportionately according to races. It's a terrible thing. And the government, we have so many politicians that are just talking about it and they're not doing anything about it. I've had a platform for accountability in the police department since I ran for Texas House in 2014. And these are some of the things that are just starting to come into the mainstream conversation now, like ending qualified immunity. The reality is The reality is, I believe Martin Luther King said, the riots are the voices of the unheard. So many people have been speaking out against police misconduct and accountability, or the lack thereof, and they're not being heard. And so this is the natural reaction. So while I do understand these riots are bad and we need to try to mitigate these as much as possible, and we've seen a lot of them be mitigated by armed protesters who are locals who come out to help protect their communities and their businesses. These areas are generally left untouched. But what's more important than that is stopping these riots from beginning in the first place. And the only way to make that happen is to actually listen to those unheard voices and make the policy changes that they're demanding. They're really not asking for a lot. They're asking to stop racism, and they're asking to stop police misconduct. That's really not that big of a deal. And I get it. I understand, the media sometimes skews the events that happen. We see somebody who was shot by the police, and sometimes it was actually justified. I know there are plenty of police officers who joined the force because they wanted to make their communities safer. But there are plenty of bad apples, and we never hear about them weeding out the bad apples and throwing them in the trash. We really need to start there because, you hear a lot about people saying we need to treat the disease, not the symptoms. And when you talk about trying to stop the riots, these are just the symptoms. We need to treat the disease. We need to change that policy. We need to stop the original events from happening that are causing this upset.
Okay. And just real quick, defunding the police. Austin did it, and plenty of other big cities are doing it.
Sure.
What are your thoughts? Do you think the police should be defunded? Do you think there should be more money put in for better training? Just kind of your thoughts on that situation.
Absolutely. So I'm going to say something that's going to freak some people out, but listen to the explanation. We need to defund and abolish all police. I know that sounds crazy, but here's the thing. We have two different types of law enforcement in this country. We have incorporated cities that have police, and those police are accountable only to the chief. In many of those cities, the chiefs are not elected. They're appointed by the mayor or by a city council, and they are accountable only to the mayor or the city council. The sheriff is an elected position. So if we get rid of the police and we say, hey, if you guys want to work law enforcement, go work for the sheriff. We have a sheriff who is in charge of all of the officers, all of the deputies, who is elected, who can be voted out if we don't like the way he's enforcing the law. And we have police officers who are working under him who have to be personally held accountable for their actions. We'd actually get rid of a lot of, not all qualified immunity, but we'd actually get rid of a lot of the barriers and protections that the bad apples have by working for incorporated government cities, police departments, if we just shift over to sheriffs.
All right. That's an interesting answer. I like it though. So your whole thing is taxation is theft. I feel like that's a big thing that you always run with. I haven't paid attention to your campaign, no offense. Anyway, I haven't really kept up with it. So is that kind of your sticker? You go off of taxation is theft.
Right.
I mean, why do you think that taxation is theft? How will you fix it?
Right. So yeah, taxation is theft. This is kind of, I talk about fixing the disease instead of treating the symptoms. All of these government programs that are oppressive in nature, that violate our rights, that steal from us, it all stems from taxes. It's all paid for by taxes. We have an IRS who's running around basically misleading Americans into paying a tax that most of them don't need to pay. And I have former IRS agents who will back me up on this, who haven't paid taxes to the IRS in decades. This is a big scam. It's smoke and mirrors, and we're all being robbed. And as governor of Texas, what I want to do is I want to give Texans the ability to push back against the IRS and stop them from stealing from so many millions of Texans, so that we can start saving our own money, paying off our debts, building our own wealth, and having a solid foundation to live our lives on.